Farrah Fawcett, speaking after her first film, Somebody Killed Her Husband, said about her acting ability, "I don't delude myself about my acting talent. I know I'm not great. I wasn't blessed with that kind of ability, but I think I'm getting better. When I first started sculpting and drawing, I was good, but not great. So I began teaching myself, and I've accomplished a lot. I think there's hope for me as an actress." And we'll be right back with Farrah Fawcett. Farrah Fawcett is with us. As this was beginning, I had a voiceover, and I was quoting you. And it was after the release of your first feature film, which of course was Somebody Killed Her Husband, with Jeff Bridges, and you said that you weren't deluding yourself about your acting ability, and you did a comparative study with sculpting and painting, and pointed out the self-improvement. How do you feel now, after finishing Sunburn, after finishing Saturn III, and being able to see your work? Are you conscious of improvement in yourself?
Oh, definitely.
How, Farrah?
Well, I think that any time you do anything, whether it's sculpting, playing tennis, and you devote a certain amount of time to that craft, whatever it is, and you make a conscious effort of saying to yourself, I want to learn about lighting, about the special effects, so that anytime anybody's talking on the set, getting away from just the acting, I try to keep myself very open. And I think that after Somebody Killed Her Husband, I decided this is my craft. I should be good. I have now put in enough time. I've allowed myself the luxury of being a beginner for long enough. Now I have to say, for a while there, I couldn't even, on my passport, when it said occupation, I put housewife. I was embarrassed to put actress. I thought, I'm not an actress yet. I'm still learning so much. I think that I see the improvement in myself, and I have to give a lot of that credit to the people that have helped me and that have paid compliments to me, and I guess you could say who've treated me as an equal. I can remember on the set of Saturn III, we were about 2 months into filming, and one day I walked in, I was in a great mood, and I said to myself, I thought to myself, and I finally got up the nerve to say it to Kirk and Stanley Donen, the director, Kirk Douglas, my co-star. I said to them, if somebody had told me when I was at the University of Texas, you will be doing a film, your co-star will be Kirk Douglas, and you will be directed by Stanley Donen, I would have said, oh yeah, right, okay. Now here I find myself in that situation, and not only is Kirk Douglas working with me and reacting to me as an equal and listening to what I have to say and respecting my opinion, and the same goes for Stanley Donen. I finally got up the confidence to say, I feel my character would do this, and I worked on it last night. I think the scene would be better. I even one time got up the courage because actors and actresses will say to each other, do you think that was okay? Was that as good as it was in The Master when it's on their close-up? And I said to Kirk, no, I think it was better when you looked at me in the first take, or something. I can't even remember what it was. He actually said, I'd like to do it again. I thought, this is amazing. I have really learned. I have grown. And it was a tremendous thrill for me personally to start feeling that way and to start appreciating my craft and what I was doing. I think up until then, I kept saying I may not be in this business very long, and I kind of avoided the issue. And now I'm more upfront about it. I have more self-confidence. I'm aware of the pressure. I'm aware of what people expect me to do and my limitations. And maybe it's called growing up. I don't know.
Maybe it's also remembering the kind of experiences you had early on when you described yourself as being the scapegoat on the set of Myra Breckinridge, yes. And that it was the giant ego and the star-tripping of Raquel Welch, who treated you very badly,
yes.
Mae West, who, sardonically enough, was upset because she had been guaranteed there would be no other blonde on the set.
Yes.
When you see people conducting themselves, and the most important thing on a multi-million-dollar film is the size of the mobile home,
yes.
And the level of the air conditioning, you are now in a position, if you choose, to emulate Raquel Welch or Mae West, and I gather, having encountered people who've worked with you and know you, that you're not doing it. But how much of not doing it has to do with how much it offended you when you saw it?
I think a great deal. When people ask me about that film, and certainly I've said enough times that I think I have learned and I have grown from the people I've worked with, not only Kirk Douglas, but Charles Grodin. And I go back and I talk about Jeff Bridges, Art Carney. They say to me, but what about in your first film you worked with? Michael Sarn was directing you, a very crazy man. There was John Huston, Mae West, Raquel Welch. In fact, I can remember when I tested for the role, and I had a couple of people, Lee Majors being number one, saying, I don't think you should do it. My agent saying, I think you should do it. It's great to work with these people. And I thought, how can I go wrong? Gee, this is a great cast. I'll learn. And what I did learn on that film is all the things not to do. I don't think I learned one thing to do, and I can honestly say that. I just thought, if this is what acting is all about, maybe that's why it took me so long to decide that this is what I really wanted to do and that I was going to devote all of my energies to it. Because you're right, when you see people throwing temper tantrums, treating you not as an equal and looking at you like you have no right to even open your mouth, I think, am very conscious when somebody new is on the set to make them feel comfortable. And I think the really secure professionals do that. I think Kirk Douglas couldn't have been kinder. I think that as I go along and I find I'm a little in awe of people, Stanley Donen, who's been been nominated for so many Academy Awards, I find he couldn't have been kinder.
Were you friendly with his wife, Yvette Mimieux? Was she with him in London?
She came towards the end of the film because she was working, and she's great. She's lovely, and they're great together. They have a very special relationship. But I didn't get to know her that well.
I gather also, just to close the Myra Breckinridge part, and I'm confused. If I got the sequence wrong, I thought that Lee Majors had been offered a part in Myra Breckinridge and had turned it down and had originally suggested you be in the film. Is that not correct?
No, I had to test for the film. We had the same agent, so I'm sure that is probably how it went about. Lee didn't suggest me, and he did turn the role down. He never was in favor of me doing it. He never thought that the film would be successful. I guess he was right.
That's easy to say now.
Yes.
I want to point something out because it's really full circle about Sunburn and Acapulco, because it makes one remember that when you were still an undergraduate, you went with a group of college classmates to Acapulco, and your mother, Polly, said that you were constantly embarrassed because wherever you went in Acapulco as an undergraduate, no one would let you pay the bill for anything because they thought you were a movie star.
Oh, how did you know that? Oh, my God.
You go back to Acapulco as a movie star. Did you sit there and think, God, it's full circle. Now I am, and I'm paying for everything.
Yeah, right. What happened? This isn't right.
Did you think of those days?
I did when I went back to Acapulco, yes. And it was amazing because there were some people there, especially owners of restaurants, and Teddy Stauffer, I think Carlos of Carlos and Charlie's, who had said those things to me. In fact, Teddy Stauffer had put out a book, and there was a photograph of me in that book, and underneath it said Ursula Andres. And I remember being very impressed at the time and thinking, isn't that terrific? That's who they thought I was. And now look what happened. So it's fun.
Was your mother, Polly, with you this time?
Yes,
she was back with you
again?
again?
She talked to all those people, and she's a very sweet Southern lady, and she said, now, do you remember what you said about my daughter? Yeah.
Was it David Mirish, the public relations man? Was that the first person who saw your photograph?
Yes, and who encouraged me, in fact, invited me out to Hollywood.
But you didn't accept the invitation quickly at first, did you?
No,
not at all.
That was the beginning of my freshman year, actually the middle of my freshman year. And it was so funny talking about old times. He would call, and instead of saying, there's a long-distance call from Los Angeles, which is always what I refer to where I live and where I'm from and where I work. And it was so funny because it would be David Mirish from Hollywood. You know, it was like, really, Hollywood? And so around the dormitory, everybody would say, Hollywood's calling you again. And it was a big joke, and everybody, after I had said, oh, no, I can't come out. I mean, I thought college was the greatest time of my life then, and as I look back, I think that I really had a good time in college, and I'm glad that I stayed and I didn't go out till the end of my junior year.
Tell you what, let us take a break on that. We'll be right back, okay? Be right back with Farrah Fawcett and more. Farrah Fawcett is with us. We've been talking around films and acting and people. There's something very sardonic about you and Suzanne Somers as entities. And I think that I'm correct in believing that at one time Suzanne Somers went into ABC and auditioned for Charlie's Angels. She did not get the role, but you did. Mm-hmm. You happened to share the same personal manager.
Yes.
And yet Suzanne Somers and Alan Hamill maintain that you have never met socially, that you are not friends. No. I mean, are you being kept apart? Or you live in the same city, you're relatively near each other, you know the same people. Why have you not met?
I don't know. Isn't that interesting? We do have the same manager. And probably I feel like I know her. And I'm sure she feels like she knows me. Jay probably passes messages. Yes, Jay Bernstein, to one another. I think that, you know, even when I worked every day with Jacqueline Smith and Kate Jackson on Charlie's Angels, we never met once, not once, socially. I think in this business, and maybe people will find it in other businesses, your private life becomes so important to you. And I think the friends that you had before anything happened to you, before you became famous or before your life became so public, these relationships mean so much to you that you're under not only pressure from them to be with these people and spend some of your time with them, that you don't always have time, or you're maybe a little frightened of making new friends. And I know that in this business it's very tough sometimes for two women to become very close. However, I do have friends who are in the business who I'm very close to, but maybe that's the reason. I don't know if it's because I'm personally not very open to, I don't like going to Hollywood parties, and I'm sure that if we were to meet or were to go someplace together, it would be a function like that. I don't know. When I'm giving small dinner parties, there's so many people that I need to invite over to my house. I've been away for a couple of months, and these people mean a lot to me, so I always try to include these people.
But I thought that when you and Lee would have a small dinner party, that would be an intimate one, that it would very often include the combination of, say, Dinah Shore, Johnny Carson and Joanne Carson, Sonny Bono and Susie Colo. Do you still see those people? And is it comfortable being with Johnny Carson and Dinah Shore and the others because there's no time wasted, you just deal with what's on your mind?
Well, personally, Johnny Carson is not one of those people. I mean, I like him and I know him, but we've never been to each other's house socially. Dinah is a very close friend of mine, and Lee's, and I don't know, those are the people that, and Sonny and Susie, you can feel very comfortable going over to their house, not putting on any makeup, knowing that they don't really expect anything of you. If you want to go in the other room and read a book, which I've done a lot of times at Dinah's beach house, if I want to go upstairs and be away from other people, I don't feel that she will be offended. I know that she understands. There's some people, when they invite you to their homes, they expect something of you, and you know that you have to be a little on, and you have to try to include their friends in the conversation. It's just being comfortable with people, I think.
As one of the survivors in American show business, what have you learned being around Dinah Shore about survival?
I think Dinah is, to everyone who knows her, I've never heard anything negative said about this lady. I would think if I were going to pattern survival after this woman, I don't know if I do it consciously, maybe unconsciously, because I have learned a lot from her, is her honesty. I think that if you are going to survive, the worst thing that can happen to you is that you stumble over your stories and you get a little confused on things that you've said to different people. I think honesty is the main thing, and I think that she's truly a kind person. And I know that when I used to think about surviving, I knew that I would have to become a little tougher. And it probably goes back to what we're talking about, toughness, and I don't mean by walking onto a set and demanding certain things. I consider toughness just being able to stand up for something you really believe. I think there's a way that you can do it. I've certainly seen Dinah be tough, and yet she does it with such kindness and such gentleness that it doesn't offend anyone. I'd have to say I learned that from her. And just, I don't know, just being honest. I think those two things.
Can you believe it sometimes when you walk by, whether you're at an airport or you go past a newsstand, and you see how you have, in the last few years, dominated magazine covers and tabloid newspapers and some of the headlines that scream out about your life at you as you go by? Can you equate that with the girlhood dream of being the kind of serious Roman Catholic you were and wanting to be a nun?
Well, I think I only wanted to be a nun for about a week.
Oh, it lasted a week. Oh.
It was a week. I thought that life would have been so easy and uncomplicated. I think that I had feelings probably. I went to a Catholic school, and I think as I started to develop and I started to have feeling towards men, and I was a little confused with having certain feelings and yet being told I wasn't supposed to have those feelings, and that if I did, I had to control them. I was at a very confused age, and I thought the easiest thing to do is to be a nun. Then you just don't feel those things, you don't allow them into your life. But that only lasted a week. But, you know, I have to tell you, at times, like if I look at my poster, if I look at a very sexy photograph of myself, because I do have strong religious beliefs, and it's always been a big part of my life. I grew up that way, and it's just something I've never lost. And I can remember one time, I think it came out in People magazine, this lady, or maybe it was a letter to the editor, said, how can this woman, meaning me, say in one sentence that she's a very devout Catholic and goes to Mass every Sunday, and yet she doesn't wear a bra? And I thought, what? How do those two things, what is she talking about, this lady? And I thought perhaps there are a lot of people out there who feel that way. I think because I have strong religious beliefs, and I perhaps at one time was a little confused, I've tried to maintain my beliefs and make them work for me. In other words, I've talked to a lot of people who couldn't do it, who've said, I have impure thoughts, I can't go to Mass every Sunday, therefore I feel I'm not a good Catholic, therefore I won't go to Mass at all, and I won't be a Catholic. I think that's a crime that these people feel this way. I don't have any of those feelings. And a lot of the letters that I get are from priests and from nuns who have said, contrary to what this lady who just wrote a letter in felt, they'll say to me, we admire what you're doing, and you are a symbol and an image that we have a lot of students, and we want them to live up to it, and they idolize you, and it's great that you talk about health and that you still have remained a Catholic. And so I get those letters, and it makes me feel that it doesn't matter that I don't wear a bra and that I'm a Catholic at the same time. So I think because now I do get letters from nuns that I actually studied under, it makes me feel good that they approve of what I'm doing and don't find fault with it.
We'll take another break on that, okay?
Okay.
Be right back with Farrah Fawcett. Farrah Fawcett is with us. Yes. We've just been talking around things. You had a statement. We were talking about Catholicism and the church and conflict of image. And are you really the woman who said at one point that you went to Mass every Sunday because by Friday you felt like a rotten person?
Yes, yes.
Why? Why would you feel rotten by Friday?
I don't know, the
Beverly
tensions
Hills?
and the pressure of the day. I know that sometimes if my father could hear this. Well, I was brought up, and my father is a Catholic, and my father has worked on a lot of oil rigs and pipelines, so his language is what we would call very rude sometimes, and by the end of the week, it's flowing quite freely. So I think that by going to Mass on Sunday, you know, I say, please just let me control myself. I know this isn't good, and Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, I have pretty much control of it. By Thursday and Friday, it's totally gone. But that's life.
You admitted that you had always been protected, that you'd had your family, you had your mother, your father, your sister, and that you were glad that you'd been so protected because it stopped you from being too wise too soon. And I just wonder at this point in your life if there isn't perhaps some danger in being protected from being too wise. Surely you've had to learn a lot on your own
Yes.
because your family was so close and protective.
That's right. I spoke to my parents about a week ago, and as always, they said, do you need us? Should we come? Should we be there? Is everything okay? For the first time in my life, I said to them, I'm okay. There's nobody that can do this for me, as I'm finding out almost with everything, with the decisions that I have to make at Fabergé. I have a representative, and I pay her to go in and say things that I don't really feel comfortable saying, maybe negotiating a contract. But when it really comes right down to it, and when it comes to standing out there on a movie set, talking to a fellow actor, a director, you don't have time to go back in the dressing room and have your manager push you out there saying, I feel this way. I think you're very much on your own in this world. And I am very grateful that I was so protected. I definitely see the drawbacks. I think if I had been wiser a couple of years ago, maybe 5 years ago, certain things wouldn't have happened to me. However, I wouldn't have changed it. I know that I went from being protected by my family into being protected by Lee. And I'm very grateful to all of them because I think it formed something in my character that I'm glad is there. I think now the things that I'm doing on my own and learning, and maybe this self-confidence that's coming out and this growth I feel, and what I said to you a little while ago, growing up, I think is just now happening to me, where I see, and I meet a lot of people that it's happened to them at 22 and at 26. Certainly it happened to me, I would say, from the ages of 28 to now 32. And I wouldn't change it. And I don't know, I like what's happening. I can only tell you that now I don't feel depressed about it, about having to face up to this toughness and the reality of life, as I would put it. But I certainly wouldn't have been prepared any younger in life.
I want to thank you for being here. It's been a particular pleasure
I want to
meeting you.
thank you. I think this is the most comfortable I've ever felt being interviewed, and it's because of you, so thank you.
Our pleasure. Come back anytime.
Okay.
Okay.